This is where projects come to life. Our showrooms are designed to inspire with the latest products from top brands, curated in an inviting, hands-on environment, and a team of industry experts to support your project. We'll be there to make sure everything goes as planned, from product selection to delivery coordination. At Ferguson Bath, Kitchen and Lighting Gallery, your project is our priority.
Find great brands like Kohler at your local showroom or visit us online at ferguson.com/build.
Hey, it's Will Friedle.
And Sabrina Bryan.
And we're the hosts of the new podcast, Magical Rewind.
You may know us from some of your favorite childhood TV movies like My Date with the President's Daughter.
And the Cheetah Girls movies.
Together, we're sitting down to watch all the movies you grew up with and chat with some of your favorite stars and crew that made these iconic movies happen.
So kick back, grab your popcorn, and join us. Listen to Magical Rewind on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Welcome to a new episode of Her Playbook. My name is Madeline Burke, and my guest today is NFL on Fox broadcaster, communications coach, media consultant, multi-hyphenate founder of Galvanize, Laura Okmin. Laura, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for asking. I'm so fired up about this podcast, and I'm so fired up you asked.
I'm so fired up to have you here, and you have quite the decorated career, as we can see by some of the things behind you here. But before we get into that one, I love one of the things that I saw that you had talked about in a previous interview was that, you've been in this business 30 years, but one thing that stands out is your emphasis on building relationships and not contacts and sources. Where did you learn that lesson, and how would you emphasize the difference between the two?
It's my favorite lesson because so many of my lessons, when I look back, were given to me by players that I've covered over the years. And when the light bulb went on for me in a big way was when I was a young reporter. I was probably a year in, maybe 2 years in tops, and I reached out to Charles Barkley. And I reached out and gotten to know Charles, and he picked up and he said, well, Laura Okmin, what do you need? And I was like, hey, can a girl just call and say hello? And he said, a girl can, you just never do. So he said, I'm not trying to give you grief. I'm just saying when you call, I know you need something. So what do you need? And Madeline, that threw me because as a young woman in sports, trying to figure out, my way, I always thought, well, I don't want to bother someone if I don't need something. I don't want to bother someone and say, what am I going to say? How was your weekend? How are you? It's Charles Barkley. So I just didn't do anything, and I called when I needed something. But it really quickly made me realize the difference of being a human and a reporter. Because as a human, I never wanted to be that person that somebody went, oh, who is it? Like, it's Laura. What does she want? And then suddenly I realized I was that person. So that changed everything for me. It's one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned was realizing how much we do have to ask for things in this business. And so to make sure that it wasn't one-sided, to make sure that I was building a relationship, calling and reaching when I didn't need anything. And I think one of my favorite conversations with Charles out of many was probably 5 years ago. I saw him and I went and said, I don't know if I shared this enough with you, but it was the most important lesson that I teach all the time. But I wanted to thank you for that. So I'm really thankful that it happened early so I could start creating a relationship-based profession. And also, I'm so happy it's Charles Barkley because it lets me name drop him for 30 years now.
That's a great one, though. And it is a great lesson because so often we're so worried about, oh, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to this. But I think it's an easy thing to forget that these athletes, these coaches that people cover, they're people. They're people, too, that want relationships, that want connection. It's something that is important to foster that way.
It's the most important thing. And I know now I work so much with players and with coaches, and it's the first thing I tell them when I'm helping them vet reporters and vet storytellers. I always say, who treats you like a person, who treats you like a contact. I make sure, again, every time I reach out, I don't need something. And I know the wives. I know now I have a company for women. I get a ton of the daughters. So I make sure that I know the kids. I make sure the significant others. I make sure that that's the foundation of building that relationship. So when I just pop up to see the Giants that maybe I haven't seen in 6 weeks, I want to make sure that the people that I have in that building aren't like, oh, Laura, we haven't seen you in 6 weeks, or we haven't seen you in a season. You didn't have any of our games. How are you? Hopefully they would say that I've stayed in contact even when I'm not needing something from the Giants. But it's the most important lesson, because at the end of the day, 30 years in, I can't remember a lot of the stories I did, and they don't interest me as much. But boy, I can tell you every meaningful conversation I've had pregame and postgame and texting and during the week that had nothing to do with being a reporter, but just being so thankful to have all these incredible relationships that over 30 years now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an important lesson that you pass on through, especially through your Galvanize program, that you've got so many young women and girls that have come through this. Some of my peers and friends have taken some of your classes as well in seminars. Where did this start for you? I mean, as somebody in this business, to take the time while you're still doing it to help other people eventually compete with you for your job, not at that same level, but.
No, but I think that was probably a point that I had to realize that, because I think someone did say that to me once, not as lovingly and lovely as you, where they said, that you're probably training your replacement. And I'm really thankful I started Galvanize older, because if I was younger, that would have stopped me in my tracks, and it would have probably made me go, do I want to do that? But now I'm like, I hope I am, because I hope what I teach more than anything isn't just, it's nothing to do with how you are on camera. That's reps, that's experience. I coach, but that's the least interesting thing to me. Hopefully Galvanize, and what I teach is how to build relationships, how to treat everybody right, how to prepare, how to have a great work ethic. So I'd be thrilled to know that that somebody taking my job would treat it with the same reverence that I do. And I just am really thankful that I saw women getting thrown into this business a lot higher and faster than when I started. And on one hand, I love it. I love that we have more women in the business. But on the other hand, I started seeing them just get thrown in really early, and watch them basically getting thrown in and thrown out because they weren't ready.
Right.
And if I was in my 20s, even my 30s, I probably would have seen that trend happening and went, well, they should have been more prepared. And I think I would have been more judgmental of the women, instead of, luckily, I was 40 and started going, that's not right. So instead of being judgmental, I got really protective and went, boy, if I got thrown in this way, I wouldn't last. So I knew I wasn't ready for it, at the ages they were. So Galvanize really didn't start as a company. It didn't start as an organization. It just started with me going, how can I help?
Yeah.
What can I do to make sure that these women feel prepared when they get the opportunity, even if that opportunity is a little earlier than I wish. So that was just the genesis of everything, is just how can I help? How can I help? And, over a decade later and over 4,000 women, it's been pretty amazing watching the growth. And you said the young women, and I love that. We have some young ones in Galvanize, but I just finished a 2-day workshop last week. We had a 52-year-old and a 49-year-old. We have 30-year-olds. We have the young ones who are starting out and want to go into sports, but we have the ones in sports. But also we have women who have raised kids, started families, and come back for the dream. And so I'm really proud of that with Galvanize. It's for every woman in sports, in front of the camera, behind the camera, and every age and every stage.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love the good things in life? Even though I enjoy a little luxury, it doesn't mean I can always afford it. Until I discovered Quince. Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices.
Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50, washable silk tops and dresses, organic cotton sweaters, and 14-karat gold jewelry.
And Quince only works with factories that use safe and responsible manufacturing practices. How great is that?
I love my silk slip dress from Quince. It is comfy, chic, and amazing quality.
I can't recommend their super soft fleece joggers enough. They feel like butter.
Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/Teddy for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Teddy to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Teddy.
Giant season tickets are on sale now for the 2022 season. In addition to ticket savings, membership benefits include access to exclusive events, experiences, pre-sales, and more. You can lock in your seats starting at just $100. Call 888-NYG-1925 or visit giants.com/tickets for more information.
Absolutely, because as time goes on, there are more and more women that are becoming more prominent, being more highlighted, being more examples of, oh, here's a career path I could pursue, or here's somebody who, like yourself, is supportive of me as a young person in this industry, and that is so important. But you mentioned, you didn't have a lot of that early on in your career. So who did you look to? Is there a person who you remember who kind of gave you those pro tips on how to handle things other than, some of the players you interacted with?
My best friend for 20 years was Stuart Scott. And when Stuart and I met, it was while we were covering the NBA finals. And it was when I was traveling with the Chicago Bulls during the heyday with Michael. So it was a big time. And I was so in over my head. And I was so intimidated and wasn't ready. And I will never forget, walked into the presser. We were waiting on Pat Riley because that day the Heat had just traded for Alonzo Mourning from Charlotte. And so I walked in a room that I was always, I was very usually the only woman, maybe one other one or two. And I just remember at that particular time, there were no other women. And I sort of looked around the room and kind of hid, like, all right, I don't want to stand out, so I'm going to hide. And Stuart was in there, and Stuart was the only person of color. And Stuart found me very quickly and, kind of like, what's up? And, and he was ESPN2. His star hadn't hit yet. So we were both coming up, and I'll never forget just him talking about we were the two that stood out, but I was the one kind of in the fetal position, not wanting to be seen. And Stuart walked in all his Stuart glory, like, why wouldn't they look at me? Like, we stand out. And so for the next 20 years, Stuart really became, my best friend, but also someone that I could go to. It was a little different because there were things I needed a woman for, and we would fight that a lot. But he was wonderful in terms of someone going through it and also being told to make himself smaller and make himself not stand out when he was born to stand out. So I would say Stuart was always there for me, but also the most important boss I ever had when I was at CNN Sports. He called me into his office one day and he asked me something about how I viewed myself. And I compared myself to two other women because there were only three of us. And he said, interesting, why'd you compare yourself to those two? And I was like, well, we're the three women. And he said, interesting, because I don't think you're anything like those two. I would compare you to, and he named one of the guys in the room. And that was the first time where I was like, wait a minute. So I'm not just competing with the other women. I'm competing with journalists, like everybody. And it made me realize how short-sighted I had been to think that everything was about me against women. So right. I'm very thankful that I had a boss early on that shared that with me.
Yeah. Yeah, because at the end of the day, you want to be looked at your career saying, oh, she's good at her job, not she's good for a woman. And it's like we kind of have to start looking at ourselves that way, too. And you have been not only good at your job, you've been great at it. You have been, 10 Super Bowls, Olympic coverage, multiple World Series, NBA, NHL championships. What haven't you done? Is there a favorite event that you've covered or something you're like, that right there really sticks out to me?
Oh, it's funny. It's just, I think this is just a getting older answer. When I think about all of those things, and they're also important to my growth as a reporter, as a journalist, but probably now as I look back on all of them, it's just about who I was with, so my heart goes out to those times with the Bulls in the heyday when it was amazing as a Chicago girl, but also because all those games I got to sit with Stuart, so that has my heart and always will. But, I've called the last 3 Super Bowls with Westwood One, it's been amazing with Kevin Harlan and Kurt Warner and Tony Vaselli and Mike Golick. And I always thought calling a Super Bowl was sort of done for me, like that just wasn't going to happen. And I was fine with that and was like, that's, just one thing I won't check off the list. And I didn't know it meant anything until I got the first one. And then I was almost overwhelmed when everybody left the field and standing there under the flyby and realizing how happy I was that it worked the way it did. I was so happy that I've called my Super Bowls in my 50s. At 50 was my first one, I think, or 49 or 50. And I'm really glad that I got to do that when I know how meaningful that is. Right. And so there's something to me about not having a lot of patience, but really realizing the right things find you at the right time. And so I'm probably really partial to these last Super Bowls because I did them at a time when I was so confident, and I wasn't 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but now I feel pretty good about what I do and who I am and all of that. So it was really neat to reach that pinnacle at an age that you appreciate all of it.
Yeah, and I mean, you had plenty of reps in. You've been on the broadcast of more than 200 games now, I think. Back in 2018, you were named the third most broadcasted sideline reporter in history. How has your approach changed over the years? You've met a lot of people. That's a harder job than people think. People think, oh, she just pops on, tells us who's hurt, and moves on. But there's a lot of work going on there.
There's a lot, probably 5% of the work goes on camera, that you're doing so much that day for the broadcast, for your teammates, for your producer, for your director, for the guys up in the booth, and for yourself. And by the way, you're watching a game, listening to the game in your ear to make sure you don't miss anything the guys say so you can follow up, and then also watching both sidelines. So there's a lot. And so what I would say is probably nothing in my preparation has changed because I'm a preparation freak, always have been. And so I probably prepare smarter than I did, but nothing has changed except my confidence. So again, if you would have, if I would have put a bubble over my head 10 years ago during a game, you'd read the bubble as you were watching me and be like, she doesn't have much confidence in herself, does she? Every hit, if I was on camera, it would be like, was that good? Did that make sense? And every time I talk to the guys during commercial, should I interrupt? Do they want to hear this? So now what's changed is if you looked at the bubble over my head now, there wouldn't be one because I'm really present. I'm not questioning why I'm doing things or questioning if I should do things. That's what reps and experience get you, is that all of a sudden you're not questioning, should I be here? You're knowing you should be there. So, right. So nothing in the prep has changed, but boy, the confidence has made me enjoy it a lot more because nobody else's voice is in my head but mine. And that's a pretty big gift, when after 30 years, when everyone's telling you don't know what you're talking about, we don't want you here, we don't care what you say, that voice becomes your voice at some point. And so getting older, it's been really nice to ignore those voices and let my voice be my own voice in my head. And especially when you're older, or for me, older, some people don't need to be older, but it's a really, really life-changing thing when the voice in your head is yours and it's a positive voice.
Yeah.
Don't miss your chance to experience a premier hospitality experience watching Giants games and world-class concerts in 2022 as a Giants suite partner. Limited full-season locations are available, or place a deposit for individual games. Call 888-NYG-1925 or visit giants.com/suites for more information.
What's up? I'm John Wall.
And I'm CJ Toledano, and we're starting a new podcast presented by DraftKings called Point Game.
Okay, like at camps and stuff like this, you take the ball out, you ain't getting the ball back. Like, you the last one up the court, they already did their thing. So I stopped that, and I just got into a rhythm and started hooping.
If King of the Court happened next season, who do you think would win?
I just think KD, bro. Like, there's nothing you can do with him.
Yeah. The Lakers should sign Trae Young this summer.
And I think they got to kind of start preparing for, like, if LeBron's last year, this year, next year, whenever it is. And I feel like a pick and roll with AD and a guy like Trae Young would be deadly.
It's like a Fresh Prince, in the theme where he hops from Philly in a cab and shows up in LA. And I was like, man, John Wall actually did that and made a name for himself.
If I did that, I need all my money back. That cab ride was long as hell.
Check out Point Game with John Wall and CJ Toledano on the iHeartRadio app, DraftKings YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Y'all need to give me my own space, but I'm about to have this lit.
Well, and you mentioned getting older and doing things at a more mature age. One of the things I love on your Twitter profile, the pinned tweet, you say in part, quote, getting older as a broadcaster and a woman always scared me. Being told there was a shelf life for aging women on camera. Not anymore. Now, this, of course, in reference to that Fox notice that you were the third most broadcasted sideline reporter. But being a woman, that is something that we think about, and you've talked about too. It's like, oh, there's a window, and there's something that, I have to maximize this before I help other people come in. As we look at that window, what is your advice to younger women who might look at you and say, you know what, I can do this. I don't have to do it in this 5-10 year window.
It's one of the things that keeps me going on camera still, even while I'm doing all these other things, is I want to make sure that not only that you all see women over 50 on camera, because I didn't see it, so I want you all to see it, but I also want you all to see a woman kicking ass doing it. So again, after not using social media for the longest time, now I use it very much to show a full life and to show that I'm very clear on my life really didn't get going until my second chapter. So 40 plus was when I started living my best life. And I'm always hoping at a galvanized boot camp that by the time they leave, my 20-somethings are like, I can't wait to be 50. Like, Laura's crushing it. Like, aging looks great. So I'm always hopeful for that. And what I would say is just, when I got notified about that, about being the third longest tenured, I had no idea about it. I had no idea anyone looked for that, like nothing. But the morning that tweet happened and I was notified, I was so overwhelmed by it. And at first I was about to tweet an age joke. And I stopped myself really quickly and was like, boy, wrong reaction here. So it made me really look back at what wasted time I had spent looking at everybody else. And all those years I was like, why is she getting that? Why is he getting that? Why am I not getting that? And comparing yourself, which, we all do. Most of us do. And all of a sudden to wake up one morning and find out I've been looking at everyone else's path, but look at the one I've created. Look how long I've been doing it. And that was a really great reminder to me that I try to pass on all the time, which is just, using the coach cliche that's so true, but just being where your feet are. And so you never get there, right? Like, here is where we are. And then there just keeps moving constantly. It's, the forever moving goalposts. And I just think that most of us spend so much time looking at there, after this job, after this year, this network, this team, like what I want to do. And it's, just a great Chicago girl, so Ferris Bueller line of just like making sure that you stop and you look at the world going around you, because it's going to pass you by. And I think that's what was really special to me. It was going, boy, I've been doing this for a really long time. And I'm glad that I finally got to a point where I can appreciate that.
Yeah. And doing it for a long time, meeting a lot of people, having a lot of memorable interactions. One of the things I got to ask you about, you and I were talking a little bit about this before we started here, but behind you, you've got a lot of really great artifacts. But that Billie Jean King doll back there, there's a story there.
Out of everything on there, like I love, like my game balls are amazing, love my Emmy, but that Billie Jean King doll. So I was working with her and the PWHPA, which is professional women hockey players, so a bunch of badass women. And we were doing an event, and my job, no joke, for a day was to take care of Billie Jean King. That was it. Like, it was Billie Jean King and Alana Kloss, her partner, and that was what I had to do. And it was at Madison Square Garden, so it was a dream of a lifetime. And I just needed it to be perfect. And a lot of things were out of my control, but it didn't matter. I was in charge of her, of them. And it wasn't perfect. And I was getting frustrated, and I was getting angry, and she could read it. My energy was off, and I just was squeezing so hard to, like, I'm sorry. I wanted this to be perfect. And she just stopped and grabbed my hand and just kind of calmed me down. And she said, pressure is a privilege. And it just really quickly was a great reminder of, like, I'm walking around with Billie Jean King, Madison Square Garden during COVID, so it was empty. So we're walking around a silent, empty Madison Square Garden, and we're walking around looking at all the pictures on the wall, and she's stopping at every one and telling me, oh, it's our friend Elton, so telling us an Elton John story. And, oh, it's Mick Jagger, and telling us a Mick Jagger. It was incredible. And so she signed that, and it says on the box, pressure is a privilege. And I thanked her, because if things wouldn't have been perfect, she would have never given me that moment. I would have never had Billie Jean King looking at me and saying that epic quote. And I wouldn't have a great story to remind myself that if I would have stayed tight that whole time, what a waste. Like, what a once in a lifetime. Enjoy Billie Jean King while you're standing here with her. And so it was a great reminder that whenever I do feel stress, whenever I do feel that pressure, to remind myself what a privilege that is.
And that is such an important lesson that transcends pretty much everything. I love that. Laura Okmin, thank you so much for taking the time today and sharing your story with us today on her Playbook. Really appreciate you and everything you're doing in this industry, and so grateful to have the time with you today.
I'm so thankful. I literally like wearing it in my heart and over my heart. So grateful that you asked, so grateful to be a part of this, and thank you so much for having me, Madeline.
This is where projects come to life. Our showrooms are designed to inspire with the latest products from top brands, curated in an inviting, hands-on environment, and a team of industry experts to support your project. We'll be there to make sure everything goes as planned, from product selection to delivery coordination. At Ferguson Bath, Kitchen and Lighting Gallery, your project is our priority.
Find great brands like Monogram at your local showroom or visit us online at ferguson.com/build.
You deserve to treat yourself, so turn your tax refund into a U fund and give yourself a Straight Talk Wireless Extended Silver Unlimited plan and get a new Samsung Galaxy A14 on them. You can get a great everyday value on wireless with Straight Talk's Unlimited plan starting at $25 a line per month for 4 lines. You'll save so much you'll be enjoying that refund all year long. It's the refund that keeps on refunding. Find Straight Talk at straighttalk.com or at your local Walmart store.
Taxes and fees not included. Offer valid through 4/14/24 while supplies last. Online only. Must purchase a Straight Talk Extended Silver Unlimited plan to qualify. Limit of 5 phones per customer. Family plan discount with 4 lines all on the Silver Unlimited plan. Not combinable with auto pay discount.